Hi, my name is Silverlock, and I've been a Pokemon fan since nearly the start of the franchise, and I've come to really enjoy doing Nuzlocke runs over the past few years. For those who aren't familiar, a Nuzlocke run is a set of rules meant to make the main series of Pokemon games more difficult, and as a result, more fun and exciting. For it to be considered a Nuzlocke run, there are three main rules to follow. When a Pokemon faints a battle, it's considered unusable for the remainder of the run and must be permanently boxed. Next, you're limited in the number of Pokemon you can catch, usually the first unique encounter in each area of the game, or a preset selection of Pokemon based on certain categorization. You're also expected to nickname your Pokemon, because as the old adage goes, if you name it, you'll end up growing more attached to it. With these rules in mind, there's a constant chance that making a mistake or simple bad luck could result in losing a valued team member for good. So for this video, and to start off this channel, I'm going to be doing a hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokemon Y using only fighting-type Pokemon. To make this a hardcore run, aside from the typical Nuzlocke rules, I will be playing on set mode at all times, I will not be using healing items in battle, and I cannot level my Pokemon past the level of a boss trainer's ace Pokemon. For this run in particular, I've decided not to limit viable encounters to just one per area. All fighting-type Pokemon will be able to be caught. Lastly, since this is a Generation 6 game, Mega Evolution will be allowed, but only in the very few battles where the opponent uses Mega Evolution as well. However, since I'm only using fighting types, there's actually only one possible Mega Evolution I can make use of before the post-game, assuming something unfortunate doesn't happen. And with that out of the way, let us begin. We start off the run by getting our starter from Shauna and the gang, a chessman I named Cecil. His naive nature lowering his special defense isn't ideal, but a little extra speed doesn't hurt. Either way, I won't be able to use Cecil just yet, since he doesn't gain the fighting type until he evolves into Chestnut later on. So instead, our true starter for this run will be the next available fighting type encounter, Riolu, which I catch on Route 2. I name him Zach, and while he is a great Pokemon to get this early in the game, his impish nature isn't going to be very helpful if we make him a special attacker. Still, having a special attacker on the team is a plus regardless of its nature. We take what we can get. So after rollerblading around for what seems like hours and hours, Zach is finally happy enough to evolve into Lucario. You would think that having a fully evolved Pokemon before the first gym would make it a walk in the park. The problem is that Zach's moveset is, well, abysmal at this level. Quick Attack is his only attacking move, and his other moves are situational at best. So our fight against the first gym leader, Viola, will have to be a battle of attrition. Zach has to survive fighting against two Pokemon on his own, while relying on a 40 base power move without a stat boost. Her Surskit starts with a bubble that manages to reduce his speed right off the bat as I start clicking Quick Attack. It then follows up with a critical hit with its own Quick Attack, but it does next to nothing thanks to Zach's secondary Steel typing. His next Quick Attack manages to get Surskit into the red, which causes Viola to use up her only potion. A couple more Quick Attacks easily takes care of her Surskit. Next is Viola's ace, Vivillon, the real problem we have to deal with. Zach's next Quick Attack deals what looks like to be about a fourth of its HP, and then it follows up with an Infestation. The attack itself only deals one single point of damage, but the set damage over time officially puts his fight on a timer. After Vivillon uses Harden, another Quick Attack finally brings Vivillon to the red. But with 13 HP remaining after final ineffective Infestation, one more Quick Attack is enough to finish the fight. So with some luck and determination, I have acquired my first badge. We move on to Route 4 where our next encounter awaits. Cloud the Ralts joins the team, but like Cecil, he won't be usable until we can grab a Dawnstone later on to evolve him into Glade. This sassy fellow will be great against special attackers eventually, but a minus speed nature with an already average speed stat isn't ideal. But we'll worry about that later. We continue on to Lumio City, but it's just a short pit stop to where we really need to go. So after Zach makes quick work of Professor Sycamore's Kanto starters, we move on to Route 5 where we can finally start building up a proper team. First, I catch a Scraggy I name Squall. He ends up having a useless mild nature, which raises his special attack while reducing his great defense stat, but he at least has the Moxie ability, so he'll still be pretty useful throughout this run. Next, I catch a Pancham and name him Zell. His impish nature is finally something I can work with, as he won't be needing his special attack for anything. After we complete the Find the Furfrou filler arc, my next capture on Route 7 is a Krogunk I named Zidane. Its evolution Toxicroak could be a halfway decent special attacker, if not for its minus special attack careful nature. Still, its poison typing will be extremely useful, considering this is the generation that introduced the fairy type. In the connecting cave, I find a Meditite I named Tifa. As you all probably know, the usability of this encounter depends entirely on whether it has the defensive Thick Fat ability, or the much more useful Pure Power ability. We flip the metaphorical coin, and she has Pure Power, sweet! I'm super excited for what she can offer later in the run. We continue with our team building bonanza outside the connecting cave by catching a Mienfoo I name Ash. Her neutral nature is fine, but her Unovan late evolution means she can't quite join the team just yet, so she'll be hanging out in the box for a while. With the catching spree at an end, we can finally move on to Cyclage City for our next gym battle against Grant. But with a full fighting team facing off against his frail, unevolved rock types, this fight ends up being a breeze. All it takes to get the win is Squall breaking bricks a few times, and even getting paralyzed isn't enough to slow him down. Second badge easily acquired. We continue on to Route 10 where I catch a Hawlucha I named Terra. She'll be an essential member of the team thanks to her useful secondary flying type. Then on Route 11 I catch a Hariyama named Bartz, who has the useful Guts ability we may make use of at some point. Before we go and fight Karina for our third badge, I head to Route 12 to catch our next viable encounter. While doing that, we finally get our next evolution, with Zell evolving into Pangoro, though he won't be of much use for the next fight due to his new dark typing. After that, I finally come across a Heracross. I name her Beatrix, and while Heracross is a fantastic Pokemon, her mild nature and underwhelming swarm ability are, unfortunately, not going to help us much during this run. With that done, it's time for the battle against Karina for a fighting versus fighting showdown. I start with Terra, and after her Mienfoo gets off a fake-out flinch, we then trade off a couple power-up punches and home claws for the next couple of turns. After that, she goes for a double slap that thankfully only hits twice, as I roost to recover some HP. At this point, the power-up punches are starting to deal some decent damage with those attack boosts, but that isn't going to matter. With the attack boost from the two home claws, Terra proceeds to easily sweep Karina's team with just a few flying presses, and just like that, we've locked in our third badge. Now that we're able to get the Surf HM, I decide to backtrack all the way back to Route 3 where I can pick up a Dawnstone. With this, I can finally evolve Cloud into a Gallade. With the addition of Cloud to the team, this fighting force is starting to come together. Next up is Ramos and his grass types, another easy fight. He starts with Jumpluff, which Zack easily takes care of with a couple Rock Tombs. Next up is his Go-Goat, and I completely forgot that it knows Bulldoze. And after getting off a weak power-up punch, Zack just barely hangs on with 8 HP after a critical hit. I switch over to Terra, who avoids the Bulldoze thanks to her flying type, and a Flying Press manages to bring Go-Goat into the red. Ramos uses his Hyper Potion, but it won't matter much. 2 more Flying Presses takes care of Go-Goat, and a no-item boosted Acrobatics easily takes care of his Weepinbell. We now have badge number 4. After dodging several stampedes of Dugtrio in Route 13, the new level cap finally allows me to evolve my starter Cecil into the physically bulky Chestnut. With this belated addition, we end up making short work of Team Flare and the Kalos power plant without any issues. Tifa then evolves into Medicham, and then we finally return to Lumio City to face off against Clement and his electric types. Against Clement I lead with Bartz the Hariyama for his first and only gym fight of the run, pre-poisoned to make full use of his Guts ability. I start with a strong fake out to take off about a third of his Abolga's HP. It then uses Aerial Ace to deal a decent chunk of super effective damage, but Bartz responds with a Rock Tomb to easily take it out. Next is Magneton, and I switch over to Cloud for his official debut. Magneton sets up an electric terrain, which will make things a little bit tricky since it powers up his team's electric type attacks. I use a slow sweep to bring it below half, but an electric terrain boosted Thunderbolt does about 2/3 damage. Clement heals using a Hyper Potion, and I take the chance to go for another low sweep. He uses his second Hyper Potion, but with the speed drops accumulated, along with a power-up punch, Cloud can finish it off with another low sweep on the next turn. Last is Heliolisk, and the Hyper Potion stall was enough to end the electric terrain just in time as I switched to Cecil for his official debut. He then proceeds to easily tank 2 Thunderbolts before getting off a low sweep that results in a one-hit KO. And with that, we have our 5th badge. Our journey continues northward to Route 14, and after another easy fight against Serena, we find our next encounter, a Poliwhirl who I name Yuna, which I immediately use a Water Stone to evolve her into Poliwrath. Shortly after that, Squall evolves into Scrafty, becoming a defensive powerhouse. I make it to Lavar City, and before we face off against Valerie and her fairy types, I decide to finally update my wardrobe. Looking good. One would think this would be a scary fight, considering fighting type's weakness to fairy. But we have Zac the Lucario on our team, and her decision to start with a Mawile of all things pretty much ensures her defeat right from the get-go. I start with Zac using Sword Stance, as she goes for an Iron Defense to negate it. However, this just lets me go for a couple more Sword Stances to max out Zac's attack, while she just goes for a couple resisted crunches. Then, some Aura Spheres and Shadow Claws are more than enough to take down her whole team, winning us an easy 6th badge. After clearing out Team Flare from the Pokeball Factory and a quick pit stop at the Frost Cavern, I finally make it to Anastar City, and after another easy battle against Serena, it's time for our next gym battle against Olympia and her Psychic types. While we're going up against the Fighting type's oldest nemesis, we do have a couple Dark types that will make this a bit easier. I lead with Zell, and begin by using Parting Shot to lower Sigilith's attacking stats after it sets up a Reflect. I bring out Zac and decide to set up a Sword Stance, as it goes for a neutral hitting Psychic. Thanks to the Reflect, it survives a Shadow Claw, leaving it with about a fourth of its HP. It goes for another Psychic, this time getting the special defense drop, so I decide to switch back over to Zell as Olympia uses a Hyper Potion, meaning I could have kept Zac in to get a free attack. I go for a Crunch after Sigilith sets up a Light Screen, which will be useless against my physical attackers. On the next turn it uses Air Slash, which flinches, but Zell's earlier Parting Shot has put in the work. But then it sets up another Reflect, so Squall's next Crunch won't be enough to knock it out. Olympia then uses her last Hyper Potion, but she's just delaying the inevitable. A few more crunches finally bring Sigilith down, and Squall gets a Moxie boost as Olympia sends out her Slowking. A crunch brings it below half as Slowking uses Yawn. I decide to keep Squall in to finish off her Slowking, and then switch in Zell after he falls asleep to take on her Meowstic. After a weak Fake Out, it goes for a Calm Mind, but a single crunch from Zell is enough for the one-hit KO, earning me my 7th gym badge against the Fighting type's biggest nemesis. We're now at the part of the story where Team Flare begins to say the quiet parts out loud, so it's time to head back to Lumiose City to take care of him. We find Lysandre's secret base under the local Starbucks, where we confront him for the first of many times in a pretty short span of time. His team can be tough to deal with, but as it happens, my team is perfectly prepared to handle him. He starts with the Mienfoo, and I start with Terra. A single Flying Press is all that's needed for the one-hit KO, so next is his Murkrow. I start with a Fly to bring it below half, but an Aerolase deals a bit more damage to Terra than I was hoping. Another Fly does the trick, but we're risking things with its slightly less than perfect accuracy. Next up is Gyarados. It intimidates Terra, but I bring out Cecil on a resisted Aqua Tail while activating its held Rocky Helmet for some chip damage. To be safe, I use Leech Seed to help keep Cecil's health up, while his Gyarados uses Outrage, which deals a manageable amount of damage thanks to his bulk. So with a combination of Leech Seed, Spiky Shield, Rocky Helmet Chip, and a final Seed Bomb, Gyarados goes down without much of an issue. Last is his Pyroar. I first switch over to Yuna on a resisted Fire Blast, then it goes for a Hyper Voice for a bit more damage while I go for a low sweep. The speed drop is just enough for Yuna to outspeed on the next turn, and finish it off with a second low sweep. That's one Lysandre battle completed. I work on clearing out Team Flare's base, and beat the admins without much fuss, until I start the battle against Xerosic, and I suddenly panic as it dawns on me. I don't have anything that can easily deal with his Malamar and its contrary ability. Nevertheless, I start with Cloud against his Crobat, who thankfully knows Air Slash instead of a powered-up Acrobatics. I expect Cloud to tank it fairly well, except it ends up getting the flinch. Which is fine since it raises his speed thanks to his Steadfast ability. With that speed boost, it's enough to outspeed his Crobat and get the one-hit KO with its Psycho Cut. But next is the main problem, Malamar. Like I said, I don't have much that can deal with superpower boosting its attack and defense when used with its contrary ability. I have nothing that can take a hit from this thing if it ends up snowballing. But at this point, I have to give it a shot. I switch over to Squall, assuming it won't go for an ineffective superpower right away against Cloud, and I am correct, but whatever strategy I was coming with on the fly doesn't take off. I decide to keep Squall in as it goes for a super effective superpower, getting its stat boost. A Brick Break basically does nothing, and I realize at this point I have severely screwed up. I realized that staying in with Cloud might have been the better play, but I was worried that a close combat would have left him open to a KO after the defense drops. Either way, at this point I have to switch Squall out, but unfortunately this wasn't my worst mistake in this series of events. I bring out Terra, hoping that resisting superpower will allow me to use Feather Dance to negate the attack boost. Yeah, you heard me right. My first smooth brain moment of this run was to use the attack lowering Feather Dance on a Pokemon with Contrary. For some reason, the fact that it has the Contrary ability completely slipped my mind at the worst possible time. And so Terra falls to a Psycho Cut, our first death of this run. Unfortunately, my series of terrible decisions doesn't end there, as I bring out Zack hoping that his Aura Sphere would be enough against Malammar's weaker special defense to end the fight, but in the end, it wasn't enough. Zack goes down to another superpower. My true starter, arguably my best Pokemon for this run, is gone, along with my only chance to make use of Mega Evolution, all because I panicked. I send out Cloud for one last Hail Mary, I go for a close combat, and despite the defense boost, Cloud manages to take out the superpowered Malamar, ending what easily could have turned into a complete party wipe. I was so satisfied with how well I was doing up to this point. Having no deaths after 7 gym badges is really good no matter what kind of Nuzlocke run you do, but this just serves as a reminder that when you're doing a Nuzlocke run, panic can lead to disaster. And slowing down to take time to think can be the difference between life and death. Because of my panic, I'm now down 2 of my best Pokemon. This especially hurts in Zack's case, since his Steel typing, special coverage, and overall amazing offensive stats are nearly irreplaceable. Terra the Hawlucha's secondary flying type and utility will also be missed, but their deaths won't be enough to stop me from moving forward. At level 50, Ash can finally evolve into Mienshao and properly join the team. Now that Zack and Terra are gone, she is officially the fastest member of the team. She will hopefully fulfill an important niche to get us through. After putting a new team together, it's off to Geosange Town to take out Team Flare for good. The second fight against Lysandre goes just about the same as the first time, this time with Ash leading against Lysandre's own Mienshao. A critical hit fake-out starts us off, although it doesn't flinch due to their inner focus ability. Lysandre's Mienshao goes for a sword stance, but the critical hit we dealt allows us to finish it off with an itemless acrobatics. Honchkrow is next, and I have Ash U-turn out to bring in Cloud, who takes a huge chunk of damage from an aerial ace, but a single close combat the next turn easily takes it out. Gyarados is next, and I basically follow the same script as last time. Cecil comes in, sets Leech Seed, tanks Outrages, and deals Rocky Helmet chip damage, and finishes off with a Seed Bomb coup de grace. Same goes for his Pyroar. I bring in Yuna, who proceeds to sweep it off its legs a second time. After slapping around some admins again alongside Serena, and subjugating the God of Death into a tiny ball, we're challenged by Lysandre one last time. This time I decide to begin with Squall. I start with a Protect to bait him into missing a high jump kick, with a Recoil bringing it down to about half HP. I then take a huge risk and stay in, as I allow a high jump kick to hit, bringing Squall down to just 6 HP, but he manages to hold on and retaliate and get the KO with a Brick Break. Next up is Honchkrow. I switch to Cloud, who takes massive damage from an aerial ace, but a close combat next turn gets a clean one-hit KO. Next up is Pyroar, but Yuna once again shows him who's boss with the usual double leg sweep. Last up is Gyarados, which Mega Evolves. It sure would have been nice to have my own Mega Evolution for this fight, but thankfully it will not be necessary. Cecil comes in for one last rematch. He switches into an Outrage, then blocks the second hit with the Spiky Shield. The Outrage ends, and this time instead of playing safe with Leech Seed recovery, I go for the Jugular with Seed Bomb. But even with Rocky Helmet and Spiky Shield chip, Mega Gyarados just barely hangs on with a sliver of health. Gyarados breaks through the confusion to hit Cecil with another Outrage, but he easily survives it, and with the Rocky Helmet damage being enough to knock it out, we can finally put an end to Team Flare and Lysandre's evil, idiotic plans. Wait, is Chestnut the best 6th gen starter? I'm starting to think it is. We can finally move on to the last leg of our run, and to start off we grab our last viable encounter, a Girder on Route 18. I name him Bosch, and with the power of most certainly having a friend in my vicinity to trade, he evolves into Conkeldurr. On Route 19, my fan club decides they want to have a go at me, and they're actually kind of a challenge. 3 consecutive fights in a row with only being able to heal between the second and third fight is a bit scary to deal with. There's a lot of planning that is needed to get through this gauntlet, but I think we have a good plan to get us through. We start off against Shauna and her Delcatty, who proceeds to get hammer-armed immediately by Zell. Next is Goodra, Goodra fires off a Dragon Pulse, and Zell sends back a parting shot to lower its attacking stats. I bring in Cloud and start with a power-up punch. Goodra responds with a weakened Earthquake, then Cloud finishes it off with a Psycho Cut. Last is Shauna's Greninja, but after tanking an extra sensory, a super effective close combat is more than enough to knock it out and win the first fight. Next up is Tierno, who doesn't give us a chance to heal. He starts with a Talonflame, possibly the scariest Pokemon I will face in this playthrough. It outspeeds my whole team, and its itemless acrobatics is very dangerous against my fighting types. Even though Zell is hurt from the previous battle, I risk staying in hopefully to get off a parting shot. Luckily, Zell just barely hangs on with 22 HP after an acrobatics. He manages to get off his parting shot, and I bring in Bosch for his battle debut. After decently tanking another acrobatics, a 4 times effective Rock Slide does the trick. Next up is Roserade. I decide to switch over to Cecil, who tanks a critical hit from a Petal Dance. So Petal Dance is actually one of the rare special moves that actually makes direct contact, so Rocky Helmet and Spiky Shield deal some chip as it ends and leaves Roserade confused. For a moment I completely forget that Leech Seed is useless against other grass types at this point in the series, so Roserade breaks through confusion to land another Petal Dance. More Rocky Helmet and Spiky Shield chip damage brings it below half HP, and I decide to switch in Zidane the Toxicroak, who hasn't seen much action in this playthrough so far. Luckily, Roserade takes damage and confusion as Zidane comes in, and he proceeds to finish off with a Poison Jab. Last is Tierno's Crawdaunt, but a couple of low sweeps easily ends the fight. Last up is Trevor, and thankfully he's gracious enough to heal our team beforehand. His Raichu is first, and I keep Zell in again to pull off a one-hit KO with Bulldoze after tanking a Thunderbolt. Florges is next, and I switch in Zidane to tank the Moonblast, and then get another one-hit KO with a Poison Jab. Last is Aerodactyl, who could potentially cause trouble since he too can outspeed most of my team. I switch over to Bosch as Aerodactyl uses the 2-turn Sky Drop, but a single Hammer Arm once he's let go is just enough for another one-hit KO to end this stressful gauntlet of battles. Our last obstacle before facing the Elite Four is Wulfric and his Ice types. You would think this would be a walk in the park with my team of fighting types, but his Avalugg has a monstrous defense stat, and my team of physical attackers may have an issue breaking through it. He starts with Abomasnow, which sets up the Hail, as I start with Squall. A Brick Break deals decent damage, while Abomasnow goes for a weak Energy Ball. Leftovers Recovery makes up for the hail damage, as I go for Protect so Squall can get back as much health as possible and stall out an extra turn of hail. A second Brick Break gets the KO and a Moxie Boost, and next comes Cryogonal. I Protect again to burn another turn of hail, but next turn Squall ends up getting confused by a Confuse Ray. With the Moxie attack boost this could be trouble, but I take the risk, and Squall manages to break through the confusion, and land another Brick Break and receive another Moxie Boost. The hail stops just in time as Wulfric sends out his ace Avalugg. I keep risking things by keeping Squall in while he's still confused with the double attack stat, as I don't feel like I can let it go to waste by switching out. Of course, even a +2 attack boost isn't enough to take out the defensive Avalugg, as he goes for a curse to boost his attack and defense. I go for another Brick Break, but this time we're not so lucky, as Cloud hits himself in confusion. Avalanche proceeds to deal enough damage that I definitely have to switch out at this point. But Squall has done more than enough to put us in a good position. I bring out Cloud, who ends up surviving a critical hit Avalanche on just 16 HP. That could have been a disaster. Luckily, all it takes to end the fight is one final close combat. And with that, we have our 8th and final badge, and a trip to the Pokemon League is next. After scrounging around for last-minute items and TMs, I make my way through Victory Road, and after one final easy fight against Serena, we finally arrive at the Pokemon League. As I'm reviewing my team and planning for the fights ahead, I start to get a little nervous. Despite a couple deaths, every major battle so far has been pretty easy to fairly manageable. But even though X and Y's Elite Four is often considered the weakest in the series due to their teams having only 4 Pokemon each member has at least one Pokemon capable of causing issues for my fighting types, and can even potentially cause a party wipe if I'm not careful. So after taking some time to research and plan ahead, I settle on my final 6 team members who are ready to take on the challenge. First is Ash the Mienshao. She's the fastest member of the team, and she'll be providing excellent utility with Fake Out, U-Turn, and Drain Punch. Second is Cecil the Chestnut, our best physical wall who can deal a lot of chip damage with his Rocky Helmet and Spiky Shield. Third is Squall the Scrafty, another wall focused on leftovers recovery and powerful but risky high jump kicks. Fourth is Tifa the Medicham, who has the highest attack power of all my Pokemon thanks to Pure Power. She's able to deal a crap ton of super effective and expert belt boosted damage with all 3 elemental punches. Fifth is Zidane the Toxicroak, who can set up with Sword Stance and provide us with priority with Sucker Punch. And last but not least, Yuna the Poliwrath, whose even bulk and water typing will definitely come in handy at certain points. With our team finally suited up, it's finally time to take on the Elite Four and win this run. I start with Wikstrom and his Steel types, as none of his Pokemon are too huge of threats compared to the other Elite Four members. However, he's still not a pushover, as you will soon see. I start with Squall against his Klefki, who lays a layer of spikes. I go for a high jump kick that brings it down to about a third of its HP. It then goes for a Torment, but since it only affects the move you choose for the turn it's used, a second high jump kick connects, getting us our first knockout and a Moxie boost. Next is Aegislash, probably his most dangerous Pokemon depending on which form it takes. I go for Protect to see what it does, and it decides to stay in Shield form by using King Shield. I then go for Crunch, which gets the one-hit KO thanks to a very lucky crit. Probopass is next, and with another Moxie boost, a high jump kick brings it down to just 1 HP with its Sturdy ability, as it goes for a weak Flash Cannon. However, at this point I'm starting to get a little paranoid that one of these high jump kicks is going to miss and deal a large chunk of recoil damage. This leads me to making a rash misplay, as I could have at least stayed in one more turn as he uses a full restore, but I decide to bring in Tifa. That's when I realized that I forgot to teach her a fighting type move prior to the fight. Whoops. I go for a Fire Punch just to see what we can get out of this slight misplay, but even with Pure Power it doesn't do much. A second Fire Punch brings it down to about half HP, but the damage from its Flash Cannons are starting to rack up. I use Recover a couple times to keep Tifa healthy, then use another Fire Punch to bring it down to a fourth. At the very least, Wikstrom is using up all his full restores, but now it's time to finally get things back on track. I switch over to Cecil, who takes damage from spikes and a Flash Cannon. I start with a Leech Seed and follow up with Spiky Shield the following turn, but it's not enough to take Probopass down on its own. I decide to switch back to Squall to have another go at it. He tanks another Flash Cannon, but Leech Seed and Leftovers Recovery, along with Protect, brings him back to nearly full HP. At this point, I'm not as anxious now that Probopass is below half HP, so a high jump kick finally takes care of that. Taking it down took way more time than was necessary. There's no time to exhale though, as Wikstrom's final Pokemon Scizor comes out. I Protect first for a bit of recovery, then a Moxie boosted high jump kick brings Scizor to the red, just barely missing out on the KO. One last crunch, and Scizor goes down, as we get our first Elite Four victory. Next is Siebold, and his Starmie is the first of the few Elite Four Pokemon that absolutely terrifies me. It's fast, it's part psychic, and it can hit every single one of my teammates super effectively. But I have a plan. I start with Tifa against his Clawitzer, who gets a clean KO with a super effective Expert Belt boosted Thunder Punch. Starmie is next, and it's time to put my clever plan into motion. It hits hard with a Dazzling Gleam, and I just need to click on Thunder Punch again for an easy one-hit KO. Well, somehow Starmie holds on with barely a sliver of HP. I was not expecting that. I do have a backup plan, but before that I decide to keep Tifa in as Siebold uses his first full restore. I'm hoping that the previous Thunder Punch was just a low roll and the second will be enough. I try again, and... well, it was definitely a higher roll this time, but Starmie still just barely holds on. I'm not giving up though. Siebold uses his second full restore, and I have to try one more time. And this one finally does the trick. Starmie goes down, and even Gyarados' Intimidate can't stop a quad-effective Thunder Punch, dealing another one-hit KO. Barbaracle is last, and I go for Recover, but a Razor Shell connects and gets a defense drop. No full sweep today, Tifa. I switch to Cecil, who just needs to get off a quad-effective Seed Bomb to get us our second Elite Four victory. Our third match is against Drasna, and her super fast Noivern with strong flinching air slashes are what's making me nervous this time. I start with Tifa again, who proceeds to easily plow her way through Jigalgi and Altaria with super effective ice punches. But next up is her Noivern. The outcome of this battle rests on whether Tifa gets flinched by an air slash. Air slash hits hard, but doesn't get the flinch. Another Ice Punch is enough to take out Drasna's biggest threat to our team. Druddigon is last, and because it's the bulkiest of our Pokemon, I decide to switch over to Cecil, but then he immediately gets Dragon-tailed, so Ash comes out instead. I use Fake Out to get some damage in, then switch back to Cecil. Another Dragon-tail hits, and Squall comes out this time. But thanks to Cecil's Rocky Helmet chip damage, Squall just needs to connect with a high jump kick to get the KO, and Squall ends up missing and takes a crap ton of recoil damage while Druddigon goes for a revenge, which thankfully doesn't get the kill. I don't want to risk another miss, so I switch back to Cecil for a third time, hoping he doesn't get hit with another Dragon Tail. Thankfully he doesn't, and I can finally finish it off with a Hammer Arm and obtain our third Elite Four victory. That was a close one. Last but not least is Malva and her fire types. This is the fight I've been dreading the most, all because of her Talonflame. Its Brave Bird is extremely powerful, it outspeeds my entire team, so none of my Pokemon can easily take a hit from it. We've got to be very careful with how we do this. We start the battle with Zidane against her Pyroar. She outspeeds and uses Noble Roar, reducing Zidane's attacking stats, while I use Sword Stance to get back up to +1 attack. As it turns out, we are actually speed tied, as I go for another Sword Stance before Pyroar gets off a somewhat soft Hyper Voice. I then go for a third Sword Stance, as it just goes for another Noble Roar. So now it's time to start our sweep. On the next turn, Pyroar goes first with a Flamethrower, and Zidane gets a burn. This is not ideal. Now below half health with his attack halved, our opportunity to take out Talonflame with a priority Sucker Punch is no longer a guarantee. I have no choice but to hope and pray that getting up to +4 attack will be enough, even with the burn, because nothing on my team can take a Brave Bird switching in. Zidane takes down her Pyroar and Malva's Talonflame comes in. I go for a priority Sucker Punch, which gets a critical hit but still leaves Talonflame with close to a fourth of its HP. That burn happened at the worst possible time. Talonflame then uses Brave Bird, and Zidane unfortunately goes down. I'm confident that without that burn, the Sucker Punch would have been a clean KO thanks to the attack boost. But we can't dwell on the loss of Zidane just yet. The recoil from Brave Bird wasn't enough to take it out, so Malva uses a full restore as I send out Squall. Thanks to Zidane's sacrifice, we can get a safe switch in, and this gives Squall the chance to get off a quad-effective Rock Slide, taking out our team's biggest threat in one hit, but we're only halfway done. Torkoal is next, and a Moxie-boosted Rock Slide is enough to bring it to just below half, as it goes for a Curse to raise its attack and defense. I'm a bit concerned that letting Torkoal get multiple Curse boosts will cause a problem, so I decide to instead go for High Jump Kick instead of a super effective Rock Slide. Torkoal goes down, and Squall gets another Moxie boost. Chandelure comes out, and immediately confuses Squall with Confuse Ray. The Squall isn't going to take it, and manages to push through the confusion, and win our fight against Malva with a double power, super effective Crunch. The final Elite Four battle is won, but at the cost of one of our team members. Because of that, we'll be going into the final fight with a slight numbers disadvantage. However, I'm confident that the rest of the team can handle the challenge. So here we go, the final fight of the run against the champion, Diantha. First up is Hawlucha. She is easily capable of dealing decent damage to start the battle, but Diantha gets immediately greedy and goes for a Sword Stance, while Tifa the Medicham gets the clean one-hit KO with Thunder Punch. She then proceeds to easily knock out Diantha's Tyrantrum, Aurorus, and Goodra. It does get tricked at becoming a Ghost type by her Gourgeist, but a few Ice Punches and Brick Breaks later, and we're already down to her last Pokemon, Mega Gardevoir. It all comes down to this. I know that a single attack from Tifa probably won't be enough, but I go ahead with an Ice Punch to deal as much damage as possible, and hope for a lucky freeze. It does manage to bring Gardevoir below half, but there's no freeze, and a single Shadow Ball takes her down. I send out my starter Cecil and hope it has enough bulk to survive a single attack, but a Pixelate-powered Moonblast is just too much. Sorry Cecil, you too were an instrumental part of the team up to the very end. I will admit that at this point I'm getting impatient to finally end this fight, and in my haste I accidentally misclick and send out Squall, which goes down about as well as you might expect for a Pokemon with a quad weakness to Moonblast. So just like that, I am suddenly down to just 2 Pokemon, and then I realize Unit hasn't had much of a chance to shine while fighting the Elite Four, So I send her out hoping she can survive one final Moonblast, and she does on just 34 HP. And with a waterfall, Yuna finally gets her moment to shine by getting the final kill, and with that, I have officially beaten a hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokemon Y with just fighting type Pokemon. I really hope you enjoyed my first video. I'm really looking forward to reading any comments, and I am open to good-natured critiques and suggestions on ways I can improve, both in video making and in Nuzlocking. I'm really excited to make more videos, and I would deeply appreciate you liking, commenting, and subscribing to my channel. It will really help me out. Thank you for watching.